The rebellion tore my family apart. My sister chose our father's perilous flight guarded by soldiers, while I followed my mother to her gilded cage of luxury. Father's path was blood and dust, a rebellion forged in exile. There, amidst the camp's grim reality, my sister wed a handsome captain, and buried him soon after. My mother's world? Silk cushions and endless feasts. I became a princess, a pawn traded in marriage to secure an alliance. On my wedding day, consumed by bitter envy, my sister struck. First, the vicious stab of her hairpin sunk deep into my neck. Then, the cold kiss of her blade across my throat. Darkness. Then, rebirth. This time, her eyes gleamed with triumph as she clung to our mother's skirts. Poor sister. Her voice dripped false pity. The road of ashes and widowhood, that burden is yours to bear now. I almost laughed. She'd traded one hell for another. For behind the glittering facade of our mother's house lay vipers and rot, a gilded pit waiting to swallow her whole. Fate offers many roads. Hell or heaven. You forge the path with each step you take. Welcome to my channel. If you like this story, please click to subscribe. There are more wonderful stories waiting for you to listen to. Chapter 1. Wu Jin. Yun Chu. This military uprising came too suddenly. We must separate and flee. Which side will you choose to follow? What are your thoughts? Amidst the chaos of the city walls, our family of 4 stood tearfully facing one another. On one side was our father, who still held an official position, and on the other was our mother, who came from a merchant family. A coup had sparked a bloodbath, and in this chaotic world, any choice one made could lead to a life of hardship. Jiang Wuzhen chose her mother without hesitation. According to our parents' arrangement, she was 2 years older than me, and if she followed our father, everyone would be at ease. But she cried and refused to stop, even threatening to bang her head against the wall. In the end, she got her way. As she and my mother boarded the carriage, I saw the triumphant look in Jiang Wuzhen's eyes. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. Jiang Yunchu, it's your turn to be a widow now. Only the 2 of us understood what she meant. It turned out that we had both been reborn. The Liang dynasty was on the brink of collapse, and a military uprising on the border triggered a massive upheaval. The powerful Wu king marched all the way to the capital, threatening to slaughter the imperial palace. To save themselves, my father and mother decided to flee separately. As the military commander, my father received a secret edict and had to protect the crown prince. My mother, on the other hand, didn't need to worry about others and could return to her maternal home in Jiangnan. There were only my sister and I left at home, and since my mother was frail, she could only take one of us. Thus, we sisters had to make our own choices. Following my father, who had 100 guards, would be safer. If we succeeded in driving away the rebels, I could become a noble lady. Following my mother, though the journey would be hardships, if we reached her family safely, we could live a wealthy and peaceful life. Jiang Wuzhen had always valued the present. In her previous life, she believed that staying by her father's side was safer and more prestigious. So she spoke sweetly and acted obediently. Father, mother, I am grown up now and will not compete with my younger sister for mother's affection. Later, she followed her father as he traveled from place to place. Her father raised an army to rebel against the tyrant. Perhaps tired of the loneliness of military life, she chose a husband from among the soldiers. Due to the prince's disguised identity, she looked down on this pale, emaciated young man. She chose one after another, finally setting her sights on a handsome centurion. Unfortunately, his title was bought with family donations, and he was nothing but a coward. He deserted the battlefield and was executed by her father's military law. She became a widow. Jiang Wuzhen resented her father for not showing mercy to her husband, So she infiltrated her father's inner circle and leaked military strategies to the enemy. Her father nearly lost his life when he discovered that the traitor was his own daughter. He imprisoned her but used her against the enemy, ultimately defeating them. It was then that I reunited with my father, having been pampered in my maternal grandfather's household for many years. I grew up beautiful and graceful. I generously donated the money and grain I had saved to my father's army, helping them achieve final victory. Once the war ended, the former crown prince ascended the throne, granting my father the title of Prince of Qingping and me the title of Princess of Huan. An imperial edict also summoned me to the palace to become the empress. As for Jiang Wuzhen, she had already incurred the prince's hatred during her time in the army, and later was accused of treason. She managed to escape with her life, but only to live in disgrace. Though we were both my father's children, our lives were as different as heaven and earth. No one knew that the Prince of Qingping had another daughter, and she was consumed by jealousy. On the day of my wedding, she pleaded with her father and mother to come and send me off. In the carved copper mirror, I had delicate eyebrows and bright eyes. My makeup was delicate and beautiful, and in the solemn imperial robes, I looked radiant and noble. But Jiang Wuzhen, who had been widowed and imprisoned for years, was dressed in mourning clothes, her appearance faded and haggard. I was about to move into the imperial palace, become the empress, and have a bright future ahead of me, while she had no idea how many more dark and miserable days she would have to endure. In her eyes, she had given up her own life for me. So she naturally believed she could take mine just as easily. So, when I wasn't looking, Jiang Wuzhen turned her hatred into a golden hairpin and stabbed it into my neck with all her strength. I never expected that we would once again stand at the crossroads of fate. If she chose the path I had taken, she would become the empress of the realm. So no matter what, she had to follow her mother this time. As she wished. My father and I watched as my mother and sister walked away, until they disappeared at the end of the road. He bent down, touched my head, and sighed. "Little Ying, you will have a hard life following your father. I'm not afraid. I'll stay with you, father." I clenched my fists and looked at him with determination, making him laugh. Just now, Jiang Wuzhen generously left me all her savings and even squeezed out a few tears. "Little sister, take care of yourself now that I'm gone." My parents praised her for being so understanding. Only I knew that she was using this silver to atone for the guilt lingering in her heart. In this life, she would be a pampered young lady, a wealthy princess, and a noble empress. And I would fulfill her destiny from her previous life, bearing her misfortune. These 5 taels of silver were the interest she paid. And from now on, my misfortune would have nothing to do with her. She was certain that the hardships of military life would also wear down my will. But she didn't know that her seemingly peaceful maternal family was a ruthless battlefield where people were devoured without mercy. In times of chaos, to survive, one must have wealth and grain, and the other must have military power. In my previous life, I held the wealth and grain, securing my mother's safety and my father's glory. In this life, I will try for military power. The escape on horseback was indeed arduous. Day and night, without rest. I had only ridden a foal for polo before, but now I gritted my teeth and endured. Even as the tender flesh on my thighs was rubbed raw, my father saw the cold sweat on my forehead and wanted to stop and rest. But I felt a surge of defiance. "Father, we are fleeing for our lives, do not underestimate me. Since I've chosen to follow you, I can endure this hardship. One day, I want to fight alongside you on the battlefield and fight for justice for the people." My father looked at me with a mix of surprise and pride, then smiled kindly. "A Yun has ambition and determination." Yang, the military officer, suddenly interrupted with a mocking tone. "What does a girl need ambition for? Swords and spears have no eyes. Your hands are better suited to needlework. I didn't even spare him a glance, but turned to my father and said earnestly, Father, I know I don't have the strength to support my ambitions yet. Please don't treat me like a young girl at home. Treat me like a soldier in the ranks and let me train with you in martial arts and sword play. I will gain the strength to support my ambitions. My father was overjoyed and lifted me up, Ayun. You truly understand me. I will teach you all my martial arts. In the whirlwind of emotions, my heart suddenly settled. Seeking immortals and fortune-tellers is no substitute for taking control of one's own destiny. Reciting sutras is no substitute for true skill. This journey will take us from the capital to the southwest to join the Tongguangwu army. Then rush to the capital's aid. Recalling my past life, this battle to defend the nation had raged for 8 long years. Now, at 12 years old, 8 years were more than enough to forge me into a sharp, cold blade. My father said that martial arts require diligence. So I tied up my long hair, dressed as a boy, and threw myself into an ordinary military camp. At the hour of the tiger, I rose to train, starting with internal strength exercises, then swords, axes, and halberds, and finally the red-plumed long spear. Among the soldiers training with me, some would try to persuade me, Hey, the captain has left. Stop pretending. Come relax a bit. Only a gaunt, emaciated soldier remained by my side. I clenched my teeth, ignored them, and continued to persevere, earning the disdainful glances of those around me. I did not do this for any other reason than that I was learning the skills of battle, to protect my country and its people, not to perform for others. The sword that sustains my life, if there is even the slightest deception in it, it will one day pierce my own chest. No matter where I am, I must always know what strength I rely on to speak. In my previous life, I relied on my wits and wealth. In this life, I must rely on my fists and iron will. So I trained even harder, not only practicing martial arts but also following my father to study maps, simulate battles, and study military strategies. I had no need to argue or fight with those soldiers. If I wanted to become a general, I would simply follow my father's example. Half a year passed, and I grew taller. My muscles became more defined, my skin tanned, and my palms roughened. I could even exchange blows with adult soldiers for over 10 rounds, relying on my slender build to evade when I couldn't win. Yang, the military officer, came looking for trouble again. Why don't you just be a proper young lady? Why turn yourself into this? A girl should be delicate and fragile, just like your sister. In my previous life, he must have tamed Jiang Wuzhen in the same way. Women should be weak, petite, obedient, and gentle. Only then can they highlight a man's strength and bravery. Yang Ting, is my father handsome? I asked him. He was speechless for a moment. As long as the commander is powerful, does it matter if he's handsome? I nodded. That's exactly right. You don't need to care about my appearance. One day, I will become your general, and you will only need to follow my orders. He laughed and left, but I didn't care. I would definitely fulfill my vow. I wouldn't let it go to waste. One day, my father received a letter from my maternal grandfather. The letter said that half a year had passed, but my mother and sister still hadn't arrived at our home in Jiangnan. My father grew anxious and immediately prepared to set out to search for them. I suddenly remembered that in my previous life, rebel spies in Huayan had kidnapped women and children. It was I who disguised my mother and me as beggars, allowing us to escape by sheer luck. Could my mother and sister have been kidnapped? I pleaded with him. Father, you must stay behind to stabilize the troops. Leave this matter to me. Seeing the determination in my eyes and knowing that I had trained diligently and possessed some self-defense skills, he reluctantly agreed. giving me a small contingent of men and nodding in approval. The young soldier who had trained with me every day suddenly stepped forward to accompany me. But my father firmly refused. I then realized that this frail boy was the crown prince in disguise. According to my memories, I had nearly been taken hostage in Hengjiang City, Huayan Prefecture. In my previous life, I traveled day and night, enduring the stars and moon, to reach this place. Unlike the destitute people along the way, the city was unusually calm. The reason was simple: the magistrate of the city was the brother-in-law of the rebel prince who had instigated the uprising. Under such heavy pressure, the waters ran deep and still. In my previous life, when my mother and I passed through this place, I had noticed that the city gates were guarded with unusual rigor. After we stayed at an inn, we always felt like someone was spying on us. So, we took advantage of the late night when everyone was asleep, smeared the ashes from the kitchen stove on our faces, put on ragged clothes, and escaped through the back door while the innkeeper was dumping the night soil. Later, I found out that Hengjiang is located at the crossroads of 9 provinces. With a constant flow of people, the magistrate of Hengjiang, day after day, selected officials' relatives and wealthy families to imprison, either forcing them to surrender or extorting money from them. In short, once he set his sights on someone, they became meat on the chopping block, at the mercy of others. One night, I donned my night attire and sneaked into the magistrate's estate used for imprisoning people. The courtyard was heavily guarded, with 2 patrol teams crisscrossing the area. Relying on my agility, I scouted around but heard a familiar voice in one courtyard. It was Jiang Wuzhen. "Mother, don't worry. Father and grandfather will come to rescue us. Besides, the food here is good, and staying a few more months isn't so bad. Mother, look at the new hairpin I got. Isn't it pretty?" Her mother didn't find this reassuring. Instead, she choked up even more. "We can't count on your maternal grandfather anymore. But what if your father is worried about us and something happens?" Wang Yang, standing nearby, also tried to persuade her. "Miss, we're fleeing for our lives. It's only sensible not to show off our wealth." Jiang Wuzhen was displeased, turned her face away, and sulked in silence. Fool. It wasn't hard to deduce that they were imprisoned because Jiang Wuzhen had flaunted herself and attracted unnecessary attention. They couldn't even escape properly. It seemed that some people wouldn't gain any wisdom even if they lived another day. After figuring out the guard change schedule, I scaled the wall like a hawk and quickly returned to my hiding spot, where I discussed the plan with my fellow comrades. At midnight, it was time for the guard change. I quietly made my way to the northwest corner of the second courtyard, where my mother and sister were being held captive. Just as the guards had finished their handover at the second gate, the southeast corner suddenly burst into flames. The fire seemed to have started inside and was growing larger. The off-duty guards hesitated, and a voice from the distance called out, "Brothers, you've worked all night. Go back to sleep. We have enough men." "Don't worry." The on-duty guards also hesitated, but a burly man carrying a bucket rushed past, shouting, "Brothers, come help put out the fire. We can't hold it anymore." At that moment, I burst into the room and shook my mother and sister awake. My mother had seen her share of the world, though I remained silent. She assumed I had been sent by my father to rescue her and followed me obediently. Wang Yang quickly packed her belongings. Only Jiang Wuzhen was screaming, "Ah! Who are you? You're kidnapping a woman. I am the Empress of Daliang. Don't touch me. Look at you. You blind fools." I gritted my teeth, pinched her jaw, stuffed a stinking rag into her mouth, and tied her up, carrying her on my back. By dawn, the imperial estate would discover that someone was missing, so we had to blend in with the night excrement collectors. Just like in my previous life, my companions were clever and always found a way out of the city. We agreed to meet at the post station 50 miles outside the city. Seeing the night soil cart covered in filth and stinking to high heaven, the rag couldn't stop Jiang Wuzhen from screaming. She struggled like a carp thrashing about, as if protesting that a lady of her noble birth shouldn't be treated so disgracefully. I struck her with a knife hand, and the world fell silent. Once we had safely left the city, we switched carriages. As the sky began to grow light, I removed my mask and whispered, "Mother, it's me, Yun Chu." Seeing my dark, rough appearance, my mother's eyes filled with tears. "My child, what have you done? You've suffered so much." My heart ached as well, and I gripped my mother's hand. She stared at me, then gently rubbed the calluses on my hands from holding the reins and drawing the bow. Her expression filled with sorrow. Jiang Wuzhen also awoke at that moment, looking at me with a mix of shock and anger. Upon recognizing me, she grew slightly arrogant. Indeed, we had both changed greatly. She, in her quest to become empress, had naturally prioritized her appearance and grooming. Her face as delicate as a peach blossom, her hands untouched by household chores. In contrast, I looked like a beggar who had spent days sleeping under the stars. Alas, beauty is useless in these turbulent times, it only invites danger. Pulling the cloth from her mouth and freeing her wrists, Jiang Wuzhen rubbed her reddened wrists and teased, "Sister, how come you've grown so different from me in half a year? You're starting to resemble Wang Laonyang." Wang Yangyang, who was already over 40, nodded upon hearing this, dared not say much. I kept my eyes on my nose and my mind on my thoughts, not daring to respond. Wang Yangyang was skilled in household affairs, efficient, and assertive. In my previous life, I had relied heavily on her to build such a large estate. Offending Wang Yangyang at this time made me suspect that Jiang Wuzhen had some intellectual shortcomings. Since Jiang Wuzhen boasted that following her mother would ensure a smooth life, she never thinks things through. When she was first placed under house arrest, she revealed her entire background without hesitation. Returning to Jiangnan now would be extremely dangerous. I decided to take them back to the military camp first, rest and regroup, then send someone to escort them back to their maternal grandfather's home. Along the way, she caused trouble repeatedly, but I pretended not to notice. Once we arrived at the military camp, my mother went to reunite with my father. One day after training, my mother pulled me aside and cried, "Yun, please persuade your sister. I don't know if she's been traumatized, but she's completely different from before." I then learned that Jiang Wuzhen had arrived here and was thriving like a fish in water. She spent her days under the pretext of learning self-defense, mingling with the soldiers in the camp. I knew she was reliving the glory days of her past life when she was the center of everyone's attention. Beyond that, she was searching for someone. Using her beauty, she was seeking a man who, in her memories of the past, was noble, dignified, and gentle. When I arrived at the training ground, she was competing in archery with a group of new recruits. Jiang Wuzhen was dressed in white, her waist tightly cinched, her chest thrust forward, her slender arms struggling to draw the bow. She stamped her feet and pouted. "Oh, stop laughing. I'm trying my best." The men's eyes roamed over her body, and once they had had their fill, they applauded and cheered. "Ah Wu is so delicate and charming, she would make an excellent wife." Jiang Wuzhen blushed at the praise, dropped the bow and arrows, covered her face, and twisted her waist, appearing shy yet deeply proud. My gaze pierced through the chaotic scene, as if I could see her past life. She had always been a timid creature, a single compliment from others gave her the strength of a brand new spine. I was already a junior officer at the time. I walked over, drew my bow, and nocked an arrow. With a sharp whistle, the arrow pierced through her meticulously arranged hairpin, piercing the sky. and struck the bullseye 100 paces away, its tail trembling incessantly. Even after 3 years of practice, others might not achieve such results. This was the talent I had honed through endless practice. Jiang Wuzhen's expression cracked. Jiang Yunchu, a woman should be virtuous, obedient, and gentle. You spend all day wielding weapons, it's utterly inappropriate. Shut your mouth and come find me at my father's camp. I didn't argue with her, leaving a parting remark before walking away. Jiang Wuzhen glared at my departing back with venom. Contrary to her expectations, the men did not follow her lead and flatter me. Instead, they curiously asked, "Is she also the daughter of Jiang the captain? She's truly bold and fearless, no wonder she's the daughter of a military family." Men are the most calculating creatures. They treat playthings and the strong with 2 different attitudes. If a woman is their equal or even slightly stronger, they will grow to despise her. But if she is far stronger and out of their reach, they will admire her. Jiang Wuzhen ground her teeth in anger but could do nothing. She dared not scold the men who had just flattered her. The only one she could bully was the young man with yellow hair staring at my back. "Go. Bring this lady a horse." She raised her chin arrogantly, giving orders. 2. The young man looked at her for no apparent reason and turned to leave. Public. Thus, the superficial Jiang Wuzhen, who judged people by their appearance, once again angered the crown prince. Kind. 13. Jiang Wuzhen couldn't get what she wanted here, and she couldn't find the crown prince she remembered from her previous life. So she urged her mother every day to return to her maternal home so that she could fulfill her destiny as a pampered rich girl. Her father and mother had always had reservations about her behavior, so they didn't hesitate much before agreeing and sending a group of soldiers to escort her. Before departing, she bowed gracefully to her father. "Father, take care of yourself. If I ever obtain money or provisions, I will send them to the soldiers in the army without delay." "Sure." Her father pursed his lips, neither confirming nor denying her words. Lately, Jiang Wuzhen's behavior had already tarnished his reputation and authority as a military officer, and this damage would be difficult to repair in the short term. She pulled me aside, as if to share a sisterly secret. Her face was adorned with a smile, but her eyes were brimming with tears. Her red lips parted, and the words that emerged were filled with sarcasm and venom. "Jiang Yunchu, don't get too cocky. The blessings I will enjoy on this journey are beyond your imagination. I will possess unparalleled beauty, endless wealth, and not only that, I will become empress." I glanced at the young man beside me, who had turned away in disgust, and smiled without responding. She continued on her own. "As for you, on the battlefield, swords and spears have no eyes, even if you survive. What then? With your disfigured appearance, which man would want you?" "Fine. Do as you please," I replied lazily. I found it all boring, not even worth mocking. It seemed that the story of my past life had twisted and turned so many times in her mind that it had become her obsession. I just couldn't understand why she judged her own worth based on whether or not a man was infatuated with her. Only goods need to be measured by others for their value. Jiang Wuzhen wouldn't understand either. Wealth doesn't come knocking on your door, and the position of empress isn't given freely. The world operates on cause and effect. If you invert that, you'll be consumed by obsession. My maternal family isn't some blessed paradise. I could have warned Jiang Wuzhen, but she wouldn't listen, and I don't want to interfere anymore. I just want to make sure she doesn't come back to harm me in this lifetime. We both had 2 chances, and both times she chose first, walking down different paths. In the end, she was the one who gained the advantage. She envies me and wants to kill me. How can I not hate her for her foolishness? In my previous life, I finally managed to settle things with my maternal family and endured until the family was reunited. As a reclusive woman, I reached the highest position I could attain. I could have used my status as empress and my power to promote education, aid the poor, encourage agriculture, and benefit the people. But because of her irrational jealousy, I met my end. In this new life, she still wants to trample me into the mud. Why should I save her? To alter someone's karma and take on their karmic obstacles. She has never understood this world, nor has she understood herself. Once again, I watched my mother and sister walk away. The silent young man behind me spoke for the first time. What are you thinking? I am thinking that I am grateful. Thankful that I was born into a wealthy official's family, which showed me where the pinnacle of the world lies. Thankful for the war, the flight, and the cold treatment I endured, which taught me how harsh the world is, how dark human hearts can be, and how suffering the common people endure. I am grateful to myself for never having belittled myself. No matter what. I recited the events of my past and present life, speaking in broken sentences, then shook my head to dispel any distracting thoughts and went back to practicing with my gun. I didn't notice the somber look in the young man's eyes behind me, nor the sudden spark that lit them up. 3 years passed in the blink of an eye, and I had risen from a lowly deputy officer to a colonel, having fought countless battles and seen countless souls fall before my blade. Enemy soldiers whispered that there was a strikingly handsome general in the Guangwu army, who wore a hideous mask daily to prevent others from underestimating him. It was this mask that accompanied me as I reclaimed one city after another. The loyalist forces supporting the legitimate ruler and the Wu Wang faction were locked in a stalemate, with the situation more tense than ever. This was much faster than in my previous life. My father remained in the rear, while I had already reached Jiangnan and it was time to visit my mother. Though I sent money every 3 months, my mother was of a gentle nature, and I worried whether she could manage on her own. My maternal grandfathers by family resided in the southern part of Suzhou City. Due to their wealth, their mansion spanned 2 entire streets. I rode my horse around the area and, following my memories from my previous life, indeed found Jiang Wuzhen working diligently in the annex at the northeast corner gate. In the depths of winter, she wore thin garments, washing her elegant attire with well water. Her hands were red and swollen, and upon closer inspection, she had frostbite. 3 years had passed, and she had yet to leave this place. My mother was the only daughter in the family. My maternal grandmother had passed away early, and my maternal grandfather was already quite old. The entire Bai family was controlled by my maternal grandfather's concubine, Song. She first used her influence to secure a position as a county magistrate for her brother, then exploited his power to seize the Bai family's assets. My maternal grandfather, under her control through drugs, had become mentally impaired and unable to manage the household affairs. In my previous life, I saved a starving female doctor while fleeing. She came looking for her family but couldn't find them, so she stayed by my side. At first, my mother and I were also tortured daily by Song Ai. I humbled myself in every way to gain access to my maternal grandfather, which allowed me to uncover the truth. The female doctor disguised herself as my maid and secretly treated my maternal grandfather during our visits to pay respects, instructing him not to eat the food arranged by Song Ai. This restored my maternal grandfather's health and clarity of mind, allowing him to seize power from Song Ai and send her to a rural estate to convalesce. I then advised my maternal grandfather to devise a plan where he would appear to be coerced by County Magistrate Song, allowing the County Magistrate to punish him. It seems that Jiang Wuzhen lacks both fate and intelligence. I secretly summoned Wang Lanyang to learn that when Jiang Wuzhen first arrived here, she was arrogant and presumptuous, acting as if she were the mistress of the house. However, Song Ai was not impressed and coldly sent her to the small courtyard where the servants lived. Thanks to my regular assistance, they initially managed to get by. But Jiang Wuzhen was never satisfied. She cried and demanded the position of housekeeper every day. Later, she even stole money and tried to escape. My mother was exhausted and utterly disappointed in her. So she only provided her with food and no longer bothered with anything else. Song Ai now had an excuse to punish her, claiming that a young lady needed to learn patience. She made Jiang Wuxian work tirelessly every day, pounding rice, weaving cloth, washing clothes, and embroidering. If she dared to slack off, the supervising maids would beat her without mercy. She only knew that in my previous life I could freely dispose of the Bai family's wealth. But she had no idea how I had achieved that. Did you encounter a destitute female doctor during your escape? I asked. After pondering for a long time, Wang Laonyang replied. It seems we did. The mistress said it was just an extra set of bowls and chopsticks. But the eldest miss refused outright and insisted on driving her away. In the end, the mistress was merciful and gave her a few taels of silver. I lowered my eyes and instructed Wang Yang not to make a scene. I returned to camp, gathered several military doctors, and headed straight for the main gate of the Bai mansion. Upon reaching the gatehouse, I presented the invitation. Soon, Song Ai came out to greet us, her smile as wide as a flower. She warmly welcomed us inside. I said I wanted to visit my maternal grandfather, but Song Ai stopped me. Second miss, please wait. You will see him at the banquet later. After drinking cup after cup of tea, a maidservant finally led me to the main hall for the banquet. My maternal grandfather was slumped in the main seat, his eyes cloudy, drool flowing from his mouth. My mother and Jiang Wuxian were wearing ill-fitting new clothes, likely having been threatened, and dared not speak out. I forced a smile as if nothing were wrong. Aunt Song, you are my senior. I hear you are a model of frugality and virtue. Perhaps you could allow Yun Chu to host the banquet according to military custom? It would be a relief for you. I spoke humbly and appropriately, so she had no reason to refuse. There were all my men outside the door, so she dared not refuse. I clapped my hands, and a storyteller entered from outside. He lifted his long robe, beat a small drum, and told the story of the evil aunt who controlled the household, and the down-and-out girl who saved her grandfather with great emotion. The more I listened, the more I enjoyed it. This was the story of my past life. Song Auntie, however, was sweating profusely and couldn't sit still. The maid she had sent to deliver a message to the county magistrate hadn't returned yet, so she stood up and said she needed to use the restroom. I drew my sword and asked with a smile, Auntie, do you know what happens to those who leave without reporting to their superiors in the military? Before she could respond, He Zhuang, one of my men, stood at the door holding the maid's severed head and shouted, reporting to the colonel. She deserves execution. I had already instructed Wang Lao to shield my mother from this terrifying scene. Only Aunt Song was too frightened to move. I ordered my men to bind her and take her away for interrogation. The military doctors stepped forward to take my maternal grandfather's pulse and examine him. My mother shed tears of relief, saying she would personally tend to my maternal grandfather's medicine. As for Jiang Wuxian, she remained cold and vengeful, glaring at me without a word. Under the military rod, Song Ai confessed everything, and Song Xianqing returned all the embezzled funds, begging me not to pursue the matter further. Indeed, the iron fist of this life proved more effective than the silver and gold of my previous life. My maternal grandfather's illness had been prolonged for 3 years. Though he was not as healthy as he had been in my previous life when he was cured, he was at least able to manage affairs again. After discussing it with him for several days, we first consolidated the family assets that had been disrupted by Song Ai, and then finalized a plan to transport grain and supplies using the military supply route, which would benefit the Bai family's merchants while also replenishing the military's provisions. All of this seemed to be going more smoothly than in my previous life. I was in a good mood, but someone else was not. Jiang Wuxian glared at me with hatred in her eyes and said angrily, Jiang Yunchu, you are so cunning and ruthless. Why do you always take what is mine? Take what is mine. Her things? Everything I have achieved in this life and the previous one was earned through my meticulous caution, relentless effort, and tireless dedication. What did I take from you? Your soap nuts for washing clothes, your spindle for weaving, or your wooden pestle for pounding rice? Seeing that I had exposed her without mercy, she briefly felt ashamed and angry. But then her jealousy grew even stronger. Don't pretend. Jiang Yunchu. In our past life, you took away my wealth and honor. In this life, I clearly chose the right path. So why are you still trying to take it away from me? I smiled even more brightly. What the storyteller just mentioned was exactly what I did in our past life. The desperate efforts on the run, the compassion for saving the female doctor, the caution in the Bai mansion's adversity, and the cunning tactics in business. Which of those did you do? Do you think the turning point in life depends on a single choice? No. It's the countless choices you've made that have shaped who we are today. The gifts of fate are always the result of your daily efforts. I have said all I can. If she still harbors kindness in her heart and can let go of her obsession for the sake of our blood ties, I too will release the grievances in my heart. After all, I still have a broader world to explore. But if she continues to oppose me, I will no longer yield. Just like in my previous life, with the cooperation of the Bai family, the wealthiest clan in Jiangnan, the Guangwu army was well supplied with provisions and ample military funds. 30,000 troops were gathered on the southern bank of the Yellow River, ready to march north at a moment's notice. I, along with the crown prince and my father, advised, build high walls, stockpile grain, and delay proclaiming the kingdom. Our suggestion was gladly accepted. Yes, the crown prince has grown from a young boy into a brave and wise young man, leading by example, open-minded, humble in accepting advice, and compassionate toward his subordinates. He seems destined to become a great ruler, as if the tragedy of national ruin and family destruction had never defeated him. My father revealed the late emperor's secret edict at the right moment, and the former grand tutor and grand guardian acknowledged their identities. The official's proclamations against Wu Wang were harsh, and I imagine he must be restless in the capital. Another person unable to sleep at night was Jiang Wuzhen, who was worried about how to make the crown prince fall in love with her. She wore colorful dresses every day, moving back and forth in the military camp, occasionally sending the crown prince some medicine and showing her affection. The crown prince was annoyed by her constant attentions. She did not know that in my previous life, it was only after I had offered all my accumulated wealth that he noticed my proficiency in administrative affairs, my understanding of the people's plight, and my compassion for the weak. With the new dynasty in disarray, he needed a queen who could handle practical matters. And since I was the daughter of a loyal minister, he welcomed me into the palace. If one could gain a man's love and respect simply by being kind to him, who could be more considerate than a maid or a servant? As the crown prince grew increasingly distant, Jiang Wuzhen gradually lost hope. However, I knew that she envied me even more. It didn't matter. Others' envy could serve as a stepping stone for my ascent. After a period of rest and preparation, some generals in the army grew restless and began to request permission to go to battle. I remained calm. There is no rush. By March, the north bank of the Yellow River had endured the winter and spring, and grain reserves were dwindling. The south bank had always been well supplied, and with the Bai family having cut off all routes for grain transport from south to north, the troops under Wu Wang's command would inevitably face a severe shortage of provisions. As I had anticipated, by the time the 3-month deadline arrived, during the lean season, spies reported that famine had struck the outskirts of the capital. I knew then that the decisive battle was upon us. As I mustered my troops and marched northward, Jiang Wuzhen also left without a word, and along with her, the offensive route I had drawn on my desk vanished. Sure enough, a dog cannot change its spots. Fortunately, I had prepared defenses in advance this time. Unlike my father in my previous life, who was caught off guard. It's good that I did my best this time to ensure the safety of my father and mother. In the attack plan that Jiang Wuzhen stole, the Guangwu army would cross the Yellow River and advance northward through the Mizhan Pass. Therefore, the king of Wu dispatched 500,000 troops to the banks of the Yellow River near Juzhou City. Little did he know that the camps I had left on the southern bank of the Yellow River were all decoys. Each camp was supposed to have 10 soldiers. But now there was only 1 soldier per camp. The 30,000 troops the Wu king thought he had were nothing but a front. The remaining 27,000 were already aboard the Bai family's overseas trade ships, sailing from the Zhejiang region through the Yellow Sea and Bohai Sea to Jizhou. From Jizhou to the capital, it was only a half-day's journey. While the two sides along the Yellow River were still provoking and insulting each other day and night, I had already marched straight to the heart of the enemy, seized the capital, beheaded the Wu king, and used his head to atone for the suffering of the people over the years. It was difficult to turn back the tens of thousands of rebel troops. By the time they turned their swords toward the capital, they were already being slaughtered by the 3,000 elite troops who had crossed the Yellow River behind them. Already without a leader, their morale was shattered, and they had become scattered stragglers. I ordered that those who could be recruited be incorporated into our ranks, and those who refused to surrender be left to join their master in death. Yang Ting, the colonel who had repeatedly lectured me on women's virtues, came forward sheepishly to report that he had discovered a camp prostitute in the enemy's encampment who claimed to be the empress. Looking at the woman on the ground, barely clothed and in a frenzy, I knew it was Jiang Wuzhen. Escaping and collaborating with the enemy deserves execution by law. But I had used her once, and seeing the looks in my parents' eyes, I couldn't bring myself to do it. Jiang Wuzhen had already paid the price for her actions. A price far more painful than in her previous life. Coincidentally, the Yunnan tribal chief was rebelling, so I struck a deal with the crown prince, now the new emperor, to grant her the title of princess without a fiefdom or tribute, marrying her off to a tribal chief over 70. Once the tribal chief died, his concubines would be buried with him. I murmured to myself, have I been too harsh on her? A fox fur cloak stained with dragon's blood incense fell behind me, and the new emperor's steady voice echoed, Sister Ayun, I fear you are too merciful, and it will only hurt yourself. The Great Liang dynasty had just emerged from war and needed time to recover. Major military campaigns were not advisable in the short term. Yet good fortune still eluded Jiang Wuzhen. Just 2 months after her marriage, the Yunnan tribal chief suddenly passed away. His son no longer concealed his ambitions, seizing the opportunity while the Great Liang dynasty was at rest to stir up another rebellion. Once again, I shed my red attire and donned my armor. I cannot retreat. For the sake of Great Liang's peace and prosperity, for the sake of the people's livelihood, and for the sake of bringing my sister, who died far from home, back to our homeland. Before my departure, the new emperor saw me off at the city gate. He dismissed his attendants, fixed his gaze on my eyes, and asked solemnly, Yun Chu, I will wait for you to return and marry you as my only wife. Will you agree? I gently brushed the fallen leaves from my shoulder and shook my head with a smile. My aspirations are vast and boundless. I do not wish to be confined to Yundian alone. I long to explore the depths of Yubei, the vast deserts of the Great Desert, the rugged landscapes of Shushi, and the southern regions of Lingnan. I wish to see it all. The sky in the harem is square, and the joys and sorrows of the people never reach the imperial palace. You may rule as a wise emperor, while I will fight for our nation and ride freely in the southern mountains. 100 years later, the history books of the Great Liang dynasty recorded only a few brief lines. In the first year of the Jingbing era, General Jiang Yun suppressed the rebellion in Yunnan. In the third year of the Jingbing era, he recaptured the frigid lands of Songbei and was in theft at Langjiaxu. Wherever he went, He promoted education, encouraged agriculture, and urged people to do good, earning the praise of the people. Emperor Jingdi Liang Guanqing granted the people rest, lightened taxes, encouraged agriculture and sericulture, opened special examinations, and allowed women to enter officialdom. He never took a queen throughout his life and passed the throne to a nephew from the imperial clan. Extra. I am Liang Guanqing. Before the Jiaxu incident, I was still the crown prince. Now I am just an unknown young man. Having lost my father and mother, with no servants or fine clothes, I no longer knew who I was. I fled with the military commander in panic. Like a stray dog. I once considered ending it all, for the pain of falling from the heavens to hell must be more intense than plummeting from a skyscraper. But there was a young girl in the group who said she wanted to learn skills to seek justice for the people. So I decided to give it a try too. After all, I am a man, and I am a bit older than her. I followed her every day, practicing swordplay, horseback riding, military strategy, and political discourse. She worked extremely hard. In my dark and chaotic world, she shone like a beacon. Yang, the deputy general, always said that women should be this way or that way. But I didn't agree. She was perfect just the way she was. Because I knew she would never belittle herself. Gradually, we grew up. I grew more and more attached to her. Yet I also grew more and more certain that I couldn't be attached to her. I couldn't abandon my ancestors' legacy and the people's realm. She couldn't let go of the glory she had fought for with every blow of her sword. My feelings for her were a shackle. She is a phoenix reborn from the flames, soaring through the heavens. I am willing to fan the winds for her, to send her soaring to the clouds. On the day I sent her to Yunnan, I returned to the palace and had a dream. In the dream, she was not a general but a cunning and shrewd merchant. Someone who haggles over every penny, yet spends money for the army and the people without batting an eyelid. She was wrong. I did not value her or respect her because of her worth. It was because she shone so brightly that I could not help but be drawn to her and find joy in her. In the dream, we treated each other with respect, governing the country together and raising several intelligent, filial, and righteous children. What a wonderful life it would have been. Alas! When I awoke, she had already been sent far away. I opened the imperial examinations to women, allowing them to enter the civil service. This was her vision. She pioneered the path for women to hold official positions, setting an example for the world. The people and history should remember her. Year after year, she never returned to the capital. It doesn't matter. I have already made plans. Once the crown prince is capable, I will abdicate and go find her. I have not betrayed my feelings for her. The crown prince was chosen from among the imperial relatives. I had originally intended to choose a princess. But though she was intelligent, she was timid. She could never compare to my wife, Yun Chu. But I never imagined that one day I would receive the devastating news that her old wounds had reopened, leaving her bedridden. By the time I arrived in the northern frontier, it was already too late. The place where she was buried was once trampled by barbarian tribes, but she had fought bravely to bring peace to the borderlands. I built a small hut beside her grave and vowed to carve a monument for her with my own hands. As I gaze upon the pine and cypress, I listen in silence to the sounds of the grave. May she rest in peace for 1,000 years. And may the songs of pepper flowers echo through the ages. End.